Hello everybody and welcome into the Steve Bonnet's TV studio. We're here filming an episode of Board Table Talk. I'm here with Board President Erica Hermans. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Andrew. I'm really excited to be here live in person today.
Yes, it's great. And we're actually going to be remodeling the Steve Bonnet's TV studio over the summer. So I just wanted to get that right out there. Next time we are in here, it might look a little different.
That's exciting. Yeah, I heard about it in the Community Relations Committee meeting. So excited to see what the end result's going to look like.
Yeah, we have a bid out right now, and once that's all that's all completed, the students will have a little bit better opportunities in here, less time setting up, more time actually practicing what we're teaching them in here.
Yeah.
So I got another thing I want to talk about. We have the Spring-Ford Best Communities for Music Education, the NAM Foundation. Actually, we received that award. I'm going to read what they wrote for us. The NAM Foundation is proud to recognize your community for the outstanding efforts of teachers, administrators, parents, school community leaders who are making music part of a well-rounded education for every child. We salute the commitment of your community to ensure that every child can learn and grow with music. And I believe we're going to recognize that at the May 22nd board meeting.
Yeah, that's really exciting. When I think about music education, this is something that's really near and dear to my heart. I just really emphasize the importance of extracurriculars as part of a well-rounded educational experience here at Spring-Ford. But personally, I can say that, as I said, music is close to me because, growing up in school, some of my fondest memories were being in the marching band as part of the color guard or in the string orchestra or the pit orchestra. So recently I had the opportunity to speak at String Jamboree, and some of the things that I impressed upon the audience there, which I would love to reiterate to our broader Spring-Ford community, is that there are so many people behind the scenes working to make this happen. So when you think about the teachers who are instilling the love of music and the passion for the arts into our students, you think about the parents who I kind of facetiously said, I know that the parents do a lot in terms of supporting their children's musical endeavors. Even the simple things as like remaining silent in the evenings while they practice or trying to get that cello to and from school in one piece, right? So there's a ton of little things that I know that the parents do that really have a big impact on their child's love of music. And of course the students, which, practicing an instrument or whether you do voice or whether you're in the color guard takes a lot of time and a lot of persistence and perseverance because you don't always get it right the first time. So I love that Spring-Ford was recognized with this reward because it just goes to highlight all the small actions that we take every day really do have a huge impact.
At the work session, we had a presentation on DECA, which was an outstanding presentation by Bobby Swire.
Just hugely impressed with the students who came to present. Admittedly, I never had interacted with DECA. I hear a lot about it from the students, whether we're doing student interviews or just second-handedly. But to see how that program is really preparing, right? It's allowing them to collaborate and build relationships, but also preparing our students for really the critical skills that are going to lead to success in the future in terms of public speaking, communicating clearly, critical thinking, right? To be able to support programs like that, which again, like the students look at as the fun part, which it is, but it's also teaching them firsthand, right? They're applying firsthand a lot of the skills that are going to lead to success in life. I love that. So any way that we can support more of that from an extracurricular standpoint, I think is huge.
The presentation that followed the DECA presentation was the 2023-2024 proposed final budget. We're kind of in that budget season. It kind of started in January with the preliminary. Now we're talking proposed final.
Yeah.
So what does that look like for the board? And we've seen these presentations every year. What are we going through right now and what's next?
Yeah, so there was a lot there. So when you think about the budgetary cycle process, it actually starts before January. And Mr. Fink would say that the budget process never stops. So where we are right now is that we are following the guidelines that are set by the state in terms of Act 1. So in 2006, the state basically came out with what is the Act 1 process, which dictates what we need to do as a district. Some of those things are checkmark boxes. Others of them is really where the heart of the budget process, right, where the work is being done. So as you mentioned, Mr. Fink came into our April work session to present on the proposed final budget, which at a high level talks about the numbers, where we are, what our revenues and expenses look like, what the difference is in terms of a tax impact. And so what the board voted on to adopt is currently at a 4.29% tax impact when you look at everything big picture. Now, that is not necessarily what we are going to vote on come May, because there is more work to be done in the next month. So, to give the community some insight, because school finance isn't like regular finance, there is an Act 1 index that is set by the state. And this year, the index is at 4.1%. So if you look at where we are from a proposed final budget standpoint, we have about a 20 basis point, 0.2% difference with where we are and essentially where we need to be. So that index is set by the state that really says, this is, and again, I'm generalizing, but this is effectively the cost of doing business in the school. So every year the state sets an Act 1 index, and that is something that school districts have to look at, because it's saying that we can't go above the index without, some type of extraordinary circumstances or going to referendum, which we would have to do on May 16th, which is when the primaries are, which, by the way, we are not doing. So we know that between now and when we adopt the final budget, that there's at least, at minimum, 0.2% that we need to shave off. So that's really where we stand now. And as I mentioned, more work to be done. So we still have a finance committee meeting in May where we're going to be continuing to talk about this. There are executive sessions happening behind the scenes where we're talking about personnel, where we need to determine how are we going to get there. So that's where we are right now.
So what's then the timeline? So you're saying at the beginning of May, when do we need this done by?
Yeah, so we adopted the proposed final budget at the work session, because we had an action item on the agenda. And so what happens next is we have to make that available for public inspection. So by May 2nd, it will be available to the community. You can either access it online, or if you wanted a hard copy, you could go to the district office and request a copy to be inspected on site there. And then from there, presumably, assuming that we have the intent to vote on a final budget at our May vote meeting, and I say presumably because technically we have to do it by June 30th. I think historically the district tries to get it done in May, but there is some wiggle room if we have to go to June. So at the May vote meeting, 10 days before that, we have to advertise our intent to adopt a final budget. And again, it's just so that the public can have their eyes on it and really come prepared, to address any questions or comments at that final vote in May.
So let's dig a little bit deeper into this conversation about the budget. And we see headlines, we see things in the news about other local districts around the area, maybe not raising taxes, or it might look like they're not. Can you talk a little bit more about what we're actually seeing?
Yeah, and even before we get into what we're actually seeing, maybe let's talk about what we're actually doing. Our job, right, our mission is to educate students, so we are tasked with that. I think a lot of times folks do have questions, and very relevant questions around, we are in a more challenging economic environment, or, folks saying, hey, we're looking towards an impending recession. Why raise taxes? And unfortunately, it's not a simple answer, but it does come to, if I had to headline it, which is state funding. We don't have fair state funding. We don't have adequate state funding. And so when I hear something like, why can't we just slash across the board, right? This is what corporations do. Why don't we just slash across the board 10%? And then maybe look to make that up in the future? I think it comes down to a couple things. Number one is when a corporation does that, they have a lack of demand, right? So when the market goes down, or when we're in a more challenged economic time, they might not have the demand for their industry or for what they offer to the public. We do, right? So in educating students, demand never goes away. We can't just slash across the board, because we know that has an impact on our students and ultimately a lingering effect on our community as a whole. So, the other aspect of that is, sometimes you hear people say, well, let's not do it now, but do it later. Mr. Fink always talks about kicking the can down the road and how that can gets heavier and heavier. And so the other thing, as we mentioned before, is Act 1 provides that index, right? You can't go above the index. So we can't just say all of a sudden, we're going to not do it this year, but we'll do it double next year when things are looking more economically stable. And this is why, as a board, we take it very seriously to scrutinize the investments that we're making in our students, because we also know that it has a direct impact on local families.
And some of the surrounding areas, we see some stuff also in the news. Did you want to touch on that at all?
Yeah, I mean, listen, you have to read beyond the headlines. So without going to any specifics and without going into any direct comparisons with local school districts, when you see someone that's not raising taxes, it could be because they are actually getting a greater percentage of state funding relative to Spring-Ford. Or maybe there are other taxes or other things that the municipalities are doing to offset the tax impact. And so, you really can't just read the headlines when it says, hey, someone's doing this and someone else isn't doing this. You have to look and dig a little deeper in terms of the why.
So one of the comments I often hear is inflation. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, inflation hits everybody. It hits all industries, including school districts. So when you think about inflation, I think about, from a board perspective, I think about fuel costs. I think about food costs. I think about built-in personnel costs that are rising. I think Mr. Fink, this is not funny. I'm smiling because this is just to show you how much we are actually thinking about it and how much we are impacted by it as a district. Mr. Fink, in the presentation at the work session, actually made a comment about the cost of paper. And I actually had the opportunity to ask him about that, because he said, hey, the cost of paper is really kind of something that we're keeping an eye on. And what he told me is that we're actually adjusting the way that we buy paper. Because the cost of paper has skyrocketed, we used to buy it in truckloads, and now it's like, no, we're only buying what we need, and we'll continue to do that because frankly, it's hit us harder than maybe we had expected. So you think about that, you think about the other things that we talk about in Finance Committee. We've talked a lot about this ever since really the first committee meeting in September, which is healthcare costs. Now, if anyone's been attending the Finance Committee meetings, healthcare costs are rising, and it's impacting the district. Mr. Fink and his team actually did a little more digging, and really want to understand: are we seeing a higher number of claims? Are we seeing larger claims? And what, in working with our business partners, we found out is, no, it's not more claims, it's not larger claims, it's that the cost of the claims are increasing. So, yeah, inflation is something that that's top of mind for the board, not just for us personally as homeowners in the district and as everyday folks who have to go out there and buy groceries, but also from the standpoint of what we're tasked to do, which again is educating students.
And as always, if anybody wants to learn more about Finance Committee, Property Committee, any of the committees that we have here, the meetings are always available to the public. So let's transition off of the budget here for a second and talk about some upcoming events. Mm-hmm. We have all the big ones. We have the 5K, we have Impact Awards, Decision Day. Beginning of May is Teacher Appreciation Week. Teacher Appreciation Day is May 2nd. Administrative Professionals Day is April 26th. So we got lots of stuff going on in the upcoming month before the May board meeting.
There are so many events that are happening here as we approach graduation that I don't even really know where to start, but I'm gonna maybe highlight a few things. So the first is Happy Administrative Professionals Day to all of our administrative professionals in the district. You all are the front lines, and I'm also speaking here as a parent who I know sometimes I forget to call my daughter out sick. I'm going to admit it right now. And, you get an email from me. And I mean, really, you are the heart and soul in terms of that, liaison between the district and our families. So thank you for everything that you do. The second thing is Mr. Schaefer in board comment yesterday made mention of the Spring-Ford Educational Foundation 5K run, which I know has been highlighted many of times on this school district website, but there is still time to sign up. I'll be volunteering at the registration table. I'm not a runner. Don't know if that's obvious. I'm not a runner, but I am going to be happy to be there to support everyone who is. So, like I said, look on the Spring Forward District website for information on that if you are interested and have capacity to come out next Friday evening. And then the other thing is Teacher Appreciation Week. You know, that is the first week in May, and I'm looking forward to, being able to just acknowledge the good work of our teachers here and just how much they have a direct impact on our students day in and day out. So my children attend Brooke and the 7th grade center, so I'm looking forward to just honoring them.
Awesome. Well, that's all the information that I have to talk to you about today. I really appreciate you coming out to the Steve Bonas TV studio.
Of course. I'm excited to see what it looks like come next year.
Yes, me too. Thank you, everybody, for sticking around and watching today. We'll see you next time on Board Table Talk.